Hello, my name is Chloe. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you my best books of 2024. So I am very excited to bring this video. I have all of my notes down next to me. I have a stack of the best books I've read this year, and I have found so many new favourites that I'm just so happy that I picked some of the books I did this year. I have just prepared a little sampler of my ratings throughout the year because I did have some very dodgy reading months. So this is based on January to November because I've had to unfortunately pre-film my content for December. So it isn't including December, but as at today's date, which is the 11th of December, I have had 1 5-star and it's been a reread. So I haven't actually read anything that would add to this video. Anyway, so I've done a little graph. I'm going to regret saying that because now I have to make the graph, but I've done it physically so I can do it on a computer. I'm an accountant, I can do a graph. Anyway, so my ratings throughout the year were like this. January, I had a 3.7, which was my best reading month of the year. Highest rated month. February was a 3.6, pretty good. March was a 2.9, worst month. April was a 3.5, May was a 3.5, June 3.2, July 3.3, August 3.6, September 3.5, October 3.4, November 3.3, which meant my average rating for the year was a 3.4, and that just needs to be better. For me, a 3-star is an absolutely fine, an okay book, but it just didn't really wow me in any way, and I need to start being wowed by my books. Have I now got rid of all the books that aren't going to wow me and I only have fantastic books left? Let's hope. So I have 16 books here to talk to you about, but in like 15 points. So I've not included sequels or rereads. I definitely don't do rereads because in theory they've been in a previous best books video. And I've not included sequels unless they are companion series. So if it's, you don't actually have to read all the books to read that book, I will include it in a best books, if that makes sense. I don't really want my best books of the year video to just be a summary of all my 5 stars. I want it to be those new favourite books that I found. So hopefully that is what I can bring you. I will start out with an honourable mention though, which is Kingdom of Ash by Sarah J Maas. This is book 7 in the Throne of Glass series, and I finally finished this series this year. I would actually just like to include it as a well done to myself for finally finishing the series. I did thoroughly enjoy it. 5 stars. I read 900 pages in like 2 evenings. I sat for hours and read this book and I had an amazing time doing so. So I really did love the Throne of Glass series, and technically Kingdom of Ash would be on my best books list because 5 stars, loved it, was the first time I read it, but as it's the 7th book in a series, it doesn't really feel right to give that a spot on the list. Otherwise I'd have to go through all my series I finished and pick my favourites, but Kingdom of Ash was particularly fantastic. Okay, so starting from number 15 and working our way up to number 1. In 15th spot, we have a 5-star read that I just couldn't not give 5 stars, even though I probably can't break down in words why I loved it so much, and that is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. Unfortunately, I guess in what is a lot of people's opinion, I do have 2 Colleen Hoovers on this list. I have found that if I pick up a Colleen Hoover, I am very likely to like it, so I try not to just film my TBR with Colleen Hoover, but it's a guaranteed fun time for me, even if they aren't the best, most well-written books ever. So I read this one in October, and this follows Rowan, who goes to prison following a tragic mistake. She then comes back into what was her normal life, and she is trying to build a relationship with the daughter that was born while she was in prison. And she was in prison because the father of the unborn baby at that point, they were in a car accident together and maybe she caused it, but he died. So it's a whole legal battle going on there, and we're following Rowan as she comes back into her daughter's life and wants to have a relationship with her. But there is a very protective father figure in place who is the best friend of her deceased ex-boyfriend. So a lot of family drama in this one combined in a relationship, and I absolutely loved it. The whole way going through I thought, oh, she's got to do something in a minute that completely shocks me, and she didn't, but I absolutely loved it. So it got a spot on the list. Next up, in 14th spot, very different vibe, we have Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. This is a very disturbing, dark thriller. I read it back in April, which feels so long ago, and I can't remember our characters' names. Gio, that's it. So 5 years ago, Gio's boyfriend was identified as a horrific serial killer. And into present day, there are bodies appearing in exactly the same fashion as Gio's boyfriend was leaving the bodies. And I have now just realised that Both of these books in 14th and 15th spot include women who do stints in prison. How interesting is that? And like how they readjust to life. That is so odd that both of those have made it onto my list. This is obviously a very different take, and it says he's coming for you one murder at a time. This book was so shocking. It was so dark. It was disturbing. I love a dark and disturbing book. Like, definitely stay tuned for the rest of the list. But my collection seems to be a mix of like smutty romances and dark disturbing thrillers, and this is the first dark disturbing thriller that got on the list. Next up, this is what I mean about companion series, because book number 13 is Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is book 2 in the Dreamland Billionaires series, and we're following Iris and Declan. Declan is destined to be the next CEO of the company, which is like a media empire founded by his grandfather, which includes the Dreamland theme park, or what do Americans call it? Amusement park? I don't know. That is in the fine print. So Declan knows that he can get his inheritance if he marries and starts a family. That's like one of his granddad's conditions in his will. But he doesn't have time for relationships. He's not interested in a relationship. So he sets up a fake marriage. Unfortunately, his fake bride pulls out at the last minute. So Iris, his PA, has to step in and marry him to prove that he is in a committed relationship. So it's fake dating. I do seem to like a fake dating romance. I thought this was really, really well done. I loved the characters. I loved them together. I loved them apart. It was just such a fun time to read. And yeah, I had a fantastic time with this. Oh, and I should say, I read it back in January. This was one of the start of the year good books. In 12th, we have a book I read in June, which is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book got a lot of hype, and it's like I didn't want to buy into the hype, but I so realised why it has it. This is like a magical realism take on a romance. We have an apartment that it can time travel, and when you enter the apartment, you can be 7 years in the past. So we have Clementine West, whose grandmother has died and she's left her apartment. So she travels, she like kind of moves away from her life as it is. She's not doing the best in a lot of different things. She moves away from her life and moves into the apartment. But when she enters the apartment, she is 7 years in the past, and she meets somebody who's staying there called, what's his name? His name isn't on the back of the book. I really can't remember his name. That's awful, isn't it? And I love this book. But she meets this man and she starts feeling something for him, but it's not like he's 7 years younger. He's 7 years in the past. So they can't have a life outside of the apartment together because they are in different times, which is just, it's so confusing to wrap your head around. But then as I was reading this, I was so stressed about what time it was, whether she had left the time, whether she was still 7 years ago, whether she was in the past. Like, it was just stressful, and I wanted her to stay in this time zone. So the fact that I got to care so much about her life means it had to get 5 stars, and it needed a spot on this list. Next up, a bit of a silly one for number 11, we have Never Lie by Frida McFadden. I read this back in May, and there's not much to say about it apart from it's just a fun, twisty thriller. So we're following Trisha and Ethan, who are newly married, and they find this house up for sale in the middle of nowhere. So they go and check out this house, but they actually get stuck there in a snowstorm. And it turns out it used to belong to an author slash therapist who vanished without a trace years ago. And Trisha finds a room full of interview tapes taken by this doctor, and she gets very interested in listening to some of them, and she thinks she can piece together where the doctor has gone by listening to these tapes. It's kind of just an isolated setting. Do you trust your loved ones? What's going on? But with mixed media thriller. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Is it anything mind-blowing? No. Was I shocked? Yes. Maybe it's my simple mind, but I really liked this. Next up, we have a third book in a companion series, but I think it counts on its own. We have Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is book 3 in the Twisted series. We're following Josh, who is gorgeous but very cocky, and he is an up-and-coming hotshot doctor. We also have Jules, and Jules is Josh's younger sister's best friend. Jules is very sure of herself, very fiery, and they have never got on. Like, they've always argued, but it's at the point where you don't even really know why. They've just always argued. Through this book, we do learn why they used to argue, like what caused it, why they don't like each other. So we do find out all of that information. But then it also turns into them hating each other so much that they don't really hate each other anymore, and they try and get out that feeling they're feeling for each other, get out that intense feeling, because the line between love and hate in this is very, very very thin. So I absolutely love this book. I just thought it was such a fun time. I was very invested in the romance, but also this one is a sister's best friend. I said sister's best friend, brother's best friend's brother. That kind of vibe is definitely my vibe in romance. If you know anything about me, it is just what I did. So definitely can appreciate when it happens in a book. I feel like it's just the cutest storyline ever. Those kind of like initial forbidden first glances that just are, I absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. A fantastic book. Next up, we have the final mention of Colleen Hoover in this list, I promise. We have November 9. I thought this book was absolutely fantastic. I have also read negative reviews and I understand them, I get them, but this book broke my heart. So we have Fallon, who meets Ben. Fallon is moving across the country to pursue a career in the arts, in acting, in drama, but it actually turns out that her dad is not too supportive of this move because she has suffered some burn injuries that are quite disfiguring to her face, and there's a whole storyline of whether she is able to go on stage and act and deal with, one, the criticism, and two, be good enough to do it. That's not me saying it, that's the dad. But she meets Ben on this night, and Ben convinces Fallon's dad that he is actually her boyfriend, and he thinks she's beautiful, so the world will think she's beautiful. Fast forward into the story, and basically, because Fallon and Ben aren't boyfriend and girlfriend, so they check in on each other and they actually decide that they are going to spend November 9th together every year and update each other on what's been going on in their lives. Whatever's happening, they will come back together on November 9th. And oh my god, it literally says, can Ben's relationship with Fallon and simultaneously his novel be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak? And the whole time reading it, I was like, 3 stars, not that bothered. We got to the end, I was a sobbing mess. 5 stars. Next up, a book that I am sure is going to be on lots of people's lists because of Bridgerton and the new series coming out. We have A Romancing Mr. Bridgerton by Julia Quinn. This is book 4 in the Bridgerton series, obviously being companion books, and we are following Penelope Featherington, who has had a crush on Colin Bridgerton for a very, very, very long time. But Colin has always seen her as the little friend, like she's not really been a romantic interest. So without spoiling this book too much, we are following them as their friendship develops, of course. And we're also following a lot of this into Lady Whistledown and the identity of Lady Whistledown, which has been revealed in numerous ways throughout the book and throughout the TV series, but we get to find out with the other characters who Lady Whistledown is, and I just think this book's really well done. I'm not a massive historical reader, so make it historical romance, make it steamy, which this is very steamy, mirrored by the fact that the TV series for this book is very steamy. So book 4 is season 3. I just thought it was really, really good, and I guess I don't have more to say on it. Next up, a book that I don't have physically, which is really weird for it to be on my top books of the list, but we have Perfect Strangers by J.T. Gessinger or Geisinger, not quite sure. I read this book in June when I went out to visit Cole and his family. Basically, my mother-in-law handed me this book and she was like, you need to read this book because I need to talk to you about it. So it starts off as a smutty romance, but then it just spirals and it breaks your heart. It literally gave me whiplash, is how I explain this book. I was so like, oh really, is this what I'm reading? And then I'd be in the car with her and she's, you know, driving and smiling to herself, and I'd go, oh my god, like I can't believe this is happening, and she'd be laughing at me and just waiting for me to find the next reveal and get whiplash once again. So this is definitely a book for someone who likes a smutty romance but might be getting bored of the formulaic nature of the books. This is definitely not following any sort of formula, and Cole laughed at me when I cried at the ending, so definitely a tearjerker, but the one word for this book is whiplash. Book number 6 that I read back in February is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. This is an age gap forbidden romance, and oh my god, I would do anything for Pike. Anything for Pike. We're following Jordan, who is in a relationship with Cole, and Cole is good for nothing. So she ends up moving in with Cole and his dad, Pike, until they get back on their feet because Cole has like trashed their apartment, they've got kicked out by the landlord, and she needs to raise money to move out again on her own. She takes up the hospitality of Pike and Cole, well, mainly just Pike. But then Cole decides that he doesn't need to be there anymore and they're splitting up, but she kind of stays in Pike's hospitality and lives in the house. Then, oh then, ladies and gents, a relationship starts to form between Pike and Jordan, and oh my god, this is like the most filthy, steamy, forbidden, like angsty romance that I've read in a long time. I absolutely loved it. You know that you're not supposed to be falling for your now ex-boyfriend's dad, but oh my god, I was so into this book, to the fact that it made my mother-in-law uncomfortable how into this book I got. I absolutely loved it. I think the romance was just done fantastically well, and oh my god, I was pining after Pike so hard. So hard. Next up, another book I haven't got, and that's also because I read it in June on my travels. It is Be Not Far From Me by Mindy McGuinness, which I actually checked out of the local library in Colestown. I saw it on the shelf and I was like, yes, I've been meaning to read this for the longest time. So this is a little novella, and it's like a survivalist novella. So we're following a young girl who's just very interested in the outdoors and how to survive, but she goes into the woods for it's like an end of school party kind of thing, and she goes with a group of friends and instantly finds her boyfriend cheating on her with this girl she absolutely hates. Not that it makes a difference who the girl is, he's still cheating. Anyway, they have an argument and our main character runs away. In running away though, she gets very injured and very lost. She now has to find a way out of these woods with no supplies. She is injured, she is starting to become delusional, and oh my god. This book was basically nothing. Like, there wasn't really that much. It was only a novella. It didn't go on for too long. It didn't ramble. It was just her trying to get out of the woods and becoming closer and closer to death. And oh my god, loved it. Just the level of weird that I love. Sorry if I've moved ever so slightly. I'm actually currently hosting Patreon reading sprints, and we got to the end of a sprint. So I had to go and do the chatty section before I could come in and carry on filming. I have 4 positions on the list left to tell you, but 5 books. Book number 4 is a very, very recent read. I read this in November, and it is The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. This is what I mean between smutty romance and just weird. This book was absolutely fantastic, but I genuinely don't know who I'd recommend it to. We're following an 8-year-old girl, and in the first page of the book, she kills a 2-year-old boy, fully intending to and thoroughly enjoying it. So it's a very, very messed up book. We're following her as a child in the aftermath of this murder, and obviously adults being presumed guilty for it, while she is just kind of enjoying her time getting away with it. And then we're also following Julia, 15 years later, whose daughter Molly is parented on a very strict routine, a strict schedule. There are no injuries, there are no problems with teachers, everything is just as it should be. And then one day Molly hurts her arm, and Julia is terrified that social services are going to take Molly away. So she takes Molly on the run to avoid social services. And she is terrified that they will know what happened 15 years ago. So I just absolutely love this book. It was so twisty and weird. I love a book like this that really messes my head up. You start empathizing with people you shouldn't, which is just, oh, when a book can do that, I just think it's absolutely great. Please do let me know down in the comments if you've read this, if you enjoyed it, if you hate it, because I just think it's absolutely fantastic. Next up, a book that is again very me, but for a different reason. We have Come Back to Me by Mila Gray. This book probably ticks off like 4 out of 5 of the tropes that I want, and throws an extra one in that I'm not sure if I want, but it worked in this book. So we're following Jessa and Kit. They meet as children, and then as they get older, like Kit is her older brother's best friend. That's it, it's her brother's best friend. We have found out already in the stack that we like a brother's best friend romance. So Kit is her brother's best friend, and her brother and Kit go off to join the Marines, and Jessa is like left at home finishing high school. But basically, when Kit comes home and Jessa is 18, something between them blossoms, and obviously on Jessa's perspective at least, it's been there a very long time. It's been brewing, it's been bubbling, but she is now noticed by Kit when they are both adults, and oh my god, I loved it. I loved it. But the thing about this book that made it very special to me, again, it's not like my boyfriend is a Marine, but we have times where we know that one of us, normally me, has a definite leave date of the country. It's not as long as these people have, but we have a leave date, and we are trying to enjoy our time together while also like trying not to think about the fact that we're leaving, but also making everything worthwhile in that time. And Clearly, I'm just going home. I'm not going to the Marines, but that level of the romance of like knowing that you just need to savor that time together and do nothing to waste it and do everything to enjoy it was just really strong in this book. I absolutely loved it. And I have said since I read this book back in May that I need to carry on and read more of Mila Gray's work, but I don't think anything's going to beat this for me. I think this is like peak for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I will reread this for a very long time. Next up, I love this one. Number 2 on the list. I loved it. If you're sat here thinking, Chloe, there's a book here that I really thought would be on your list. Have you not included it because it's a series? But you said you were doing companions. It's Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is book 2 in the Chestnut Springs series. We're following Cade. Oh my god, I loved this book. I loved this book so much. So we are following, what's her name? Willa. We're following Willa, and she's out of work, and Cade is looking for a nanny. He has a young son, and she is employed to be the like live-in nanny. At first, Cade is grumpy, not very open in getting to know her, just wants to carry on with his life and not really be fussed that she's around. But she worms her way into his life and he can't say no. He is 13 years older, so we have another age gap. Feels forbidden, but there's no reason for it actually to be forbidden romance. Yeah, there's an age gap. We're on a ranch. Country themes. There's a country playlist in this. Throw a country playlist in literally any book. It could be a non-fiction about like Henry VIII. You throw a country playlist in there, I'm like, oh, this is fun. One of Them Girls by Lee Bryce. Speechless, Dan and Shay. Hurricane, Luke Combs. Things a Man Ought to Know, Lainey Wilson. Yours, Russell Dickerson. So I've read all the playlists for all of these books, like studied them, and this has the best playlist too. So if you've watched more of my content, 2024 has been the year that I've really discovered my love for live country music. So I've seen live country music before, but this year I really went all out. I went to concerts alone. I was queuing 6 hours for the Barrier. Like, country music is the place I absolutely love to be now. So give me a country book. They don't actually have to be a cowboy. Like, book 1 in this series is a bull rider. They don't have to be a cowboy. They don't have to live on a ranch, but it does help. Country vibes. Forbidden older man. I'm here for it. Here for it. Perfect. This book was perfect. I've just said those books were perfect, but what could be more perfect than that book? I said I wasn't going to buy into the hype of these books. I didn't understand everyone that was talking about them. I said, how does a romance need to be that long? But we have Binding 13 and Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. So this is books 1 and 2 in the Boys of Tom Men series, and I'm talking about them as a pair because it's been a very long time since I've experienced finishing a book and physically not being able to read anything else but the sequel. But that happened with these. I finished this book, all 800 pages of it, and instantly ordered book 2. I needed it, and I still stand by. How does a romance need to be that long? Well, that's because this isn't a romance. There is a romance story, of course. We have got massive hearts on the cover. We're talking about Johnny and Shannon. How could I forget their names? And it is a romance at its core, but what we're actually talking about is the development of these characters, how they come out of, for Shannon, a horrible, tragic home life, and she's bullied both at school and at home. She is just trying to find an escape in her new school, which is Tom Men College. Johnny is the star of the rugby team at the college. He's a couple of years older than her, but still in high school, and he has an accident on the first day Shannon's around, knocks her out with a rugby ball, and then he feels indebted to help her. Genuinely, not many words to talk about this series. I've only read the first 3 out of 5. I know, I'm shocked, especially how much I loved these. But this is kind of like a story in itself, and we wrap it up with quite a nice bow on it. But I just had the best time reading these books. I don't know what I'd have done to improve them. I don't even think you could make them shorter because I feel like that would just get rid of something that I loved. But I sat for basically 2 weekends and just devoured these books. So they had to get technically spot number 1 on the list. So there we have it. Those are my favourite books of 2024. Please do let me know if you share any of my opinions. If you adamantly disagree with any of my opinions, I'd also love to hear from you. I want to talk about these books. Whether you hated them, loved them, please just let me know. Just have a chat with me. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is now the end of my end of year content pre-filming, so I can edit these tomorrow, get off on my holiday travels, and be back with you in real time in 2025. Thank you guys so much. I hope you agree on some of my opinions, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.